Welcome back to A Curious Couple, the podcast that questions everything to help foster a healthy sense of curiosity. The deeper you dig, the more you uncover. I'm Angie.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are grateful to have you join us today as we look at the education system in America.
Educate yourselves.
It's back to school season time.
Yeah, it is. Everybody's posting the little first day of school photos.
Right? It's very cute.
It is cute. I did a first day of school photo once in a Speedo. It was wonderful.
Oh my gosh, you did.
I did.
Aww.
One of my attempts to get through college.
How'd that go for you?
That's why I used attempt. Oh, man.
See, I love back to school. I mean, I used to love school in general, so...
Yeah, I'm not so... I got mixed feelings with it. Definitely mixed feelings with school. But
that's fair.
I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yes.
I'm really excited to dive into education and... I mean, especially with you, you're starting a school.
Yeah. I mean, I'm starting pre-education, so...
Yeah.
It's kind of the building blocks.
And you've been homeschooling our girls.
I have been.
Yeah, so...
It's been a good one.
You've taught at a charter school.
I did teach at a charter school.
Like a very strict charter school.
It was
like
very strict.
No nonsense, you use rulers to slap knuckles type of charter school.
There were uniforms.
There were uniforms. Anyways, but before we get too far ahead, we need to follow up on last week's challenge.
Follow up. So last week we talked about kitsch. Kitsch art. How the Hobbit films were basically trash. Looking back, I feel bad.
I don't. Kitsch is basically anything that's made with no soul. So I do not feel bad because the hobbits are soulless.
But I loved Smog.
There are moments of it, and it's hard to classify films that way because actors put their whole soul into it, you know? Producers, artists.
It's a big project.
It is. There are people that cared and wanted it to do really well, but the overall theme was just money grubbing.
Money, money, money.
Money, 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 money.
Right, us and our two different musicals.
If you haven't done me.
I got ABBA, Mamma Mia.
And I'm the MC.
I do love cabaret.
I
though.
would die to be the MC again.
Don't die.
I would literally do anything.
You'll do it someday.
Anyways.
Follow up on kitsch.
Let's follow up. What was the challenge?
The challenge was to find a way to support local art, local artists, anything non-corporate, right? So last week we talked about it on the podcast. We went and supported a local community theater in a production of Gypsy.
Yeah.
And obviously that was fantastic, and it was wonderful and so cool to see so many very talented people performing, and a show I really didn't know anything about, which was really interesting.
I love seeing it because the performers give so much of themselves and they receive so little in return. It's not like professional theater where it's a job and you get a paycheck. These performers that we know and are friends of ours, and we've done it too, and community theater actors know, you just give. It's really a form of service. Rarely will you receive a paycheck. Very rarely.
That's very...
And if you do, it is pennies for the amount of time and effort that you've put into it.
Exactly.
But still, with all that in mind, these performers showed up. And
they showed up.
They did, and they
so
gave it their
great.
all, and it was wonderful. And I loved seeing them on stage.
I did too.
Yeah,
I really
it was
did.
beautiful.
I really did. Another way I found to support local artists, and not so much local as much as just artists in general, I hadn't really looked at it before, but the TikTok shop. Like, it sounds so silly because you're shopping on a social media app, but there are so many incredible artists who design and make these things in their home and are able to create a business that way. And I was just kind of shook by looking through, just kind of checking out how
I've never
the
done
TikTok
that.
shop works. And there's so many incredible artists out there.
Cool.
So I'm excited to, especially with my little fandom obsession stuff. There's a lot of places you can't find merch or anything like that unless it's through a specific artist or like through another crazy fan like you. So it's fun to make those kind of connections.
I love that. Well, hopefully you also found a way to support a local community cause, a
Yeah.
local community business. Because I was thinking about this last week. A small mom and pop store, that is a form of art. You know, that is. And so going somewhere local, you're supporting the arts.
Absolutely. Culinary arts, guys.
All right. That is enough foreplay. Let's dive in.
Excuse you. Foreplay. Okay, anyway.
Education. Let's talk about something that wasn't educated on.
Foreplay?
Just, human maturation in general. Even when it is educated on, it's such like this enigma of mystery. Yeah, and like the only concrete thing they tell you is your armpits are going to get hairy and stink, and you're
You
like,
know what? I do remember that part of maturation.
Everyone does. That's the part everyone remembers. Maybe it was trauma. Maybe they told us everything and we just were blocking it all out and repressed all the memories.
Maybe.
Who knows? Human perception is a wild thing.
It is a wild thing.
Okay, so we want to talk about education because like we
Yes.
mentioned, it is back to school. We have made the choice to not put our girls in the public school system, and we just kind of wanted to get into that. Like, what is the public school system? When people ask us like why we've chosen to homeschool and do a non-traditional schooling thing, my response is, first of all, when you leave a high demand religion, it's like the first domino in a chain of dominoes. So you leave this high demand religion and you start questioning everything. And then you start questioning everything about everything else. And the dominoes just tumble. And so my response is always, why would we send them off 8 hours a day to have them programmed just so they can deprogram in their adult life and unlearn all this garbage that's crammed down their throats? I don't know about you, but what are your thoughts on the education program? I have strong feelings towards public education.
And, I mean, we're obviously pretty much on the same page with that. I do also want to add with it, having been a teacher, having been in a high demand classroom, it's really tricky to see that as a parent and see that point of view of being a teacher, being responsible for 30 kids. And there's so much that they're trying to teach you and you're trying to get through to these kids and they just we don't have the attention. I got burnt out so quickly.
Yeah.
It was so emotionally draining and I just wanted to be there so badly for these kids. And it was really, really hard. So I can just imagine these teachers who are just continually getting paid less and less and less.
And that's the thing, is the caveat. When we talk about this, it is not really a critique on the teachers themselves.
No.
I would say 95% of the teachers that I had, that I interacted with, phenomenal. They were giving their all. They were doing their best with the system that was given to them.
Exactly.
It's the system that I
Agreed.
have all my issues with.
Agreed, because I think that there are fantastic principals, administratives, and incredible teachers. There really are so many incredible teachers, but it's also just a tricky job in general.
Of course.
For me, I just wanted to be able to give my kids the most attention that I could with their education, and I guess maybe I'm just paranoid. There's a lot of safety issues that are really tricky in this day and age, and the 8 hours a day is really hard because having taught and having been doing homeschool and having been a teacher, there's no need to have a child for 8 hours a day sitting with 15-minute breaks and like
Capitalism.
Well, and when I was teaching, it also had an early morning and late afternoon program. So sometimes I would have these kids for 10 hours a day.
Yeah, and you were at the charter school, and so parents would pay more to drop their kids off early and then pick them up late so that they could work their 9-to-5 job, which wasn't usually a 9-to-5 job because they were all like executive levels.
No, yeah, I had one. He came up. He was the earliest. He would come at 7 a.m. every morning sharp, and then he'd pick them up about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
And he was a rocket scientist. Like, he was brilliant.
Sure.
Brilliant man.
Sure.
And his kids were brilliant and well behaved and super disciplined. But it just, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just too much of a sap. I'm just like, that's just too much for me. As a parent, not saying that they don't want to be with their kids, but if I have the time and the means and the ability, I want to give that attention and time to my kids.
Yeah. So let's look at that system that we've been given.
Exactly.
Okay, because public schools weren't always around. And I mean, I watched Little House on the Prairie as a kid, you know, and I was told about this. And my parents were pretty traditional in educating. Like, I started school a year later than everybody else. And my mom taught me at home. And I remember reading the McGuffey Readers. I didn't read the Dick and Jane books or the sight word books. I read...
Your phonics.
Yeah, I read the McGuffey Readers. And I hated them as a child because there were no pictures and it was all like antiquated English.
How do you read this?
Yeah, it was all so over my head. And so I didn't even comprehend what was happening most of the time. But the public school system has definitely shifted, and from my research, what I was reading is it really transformed when school buses became motorized, and they were able to eliminate those single room classrooms where they had one teacher for basically the whole community, and all the kids of school age would just show up into the one room.
Whether they're 6 or 12.
Yeah, that was cut when they had the school buses, and they were able to ship kids from far distances to one central building.
There is something kind of comforting. Like, it's very apple pie-esque to think of, like, this one sweet school teacher and then all the kids, like Anne of Green Gables or even Holes.
And they're bringing her apples.
Right.
And,
It's an adorable little picture. My little pioneer heritage brain is... It rubbed my brain in a good way.
It is. Now, the person that is credited with creating the system is a man named Horace Mann.
Yes, sir.
And he's often referred to as the father of the common school movement. He was a principal advocate for tuition-free public education in the 19th century. He really started the whole thing. He actually helped create the Board of Education and get the whole public school system rolling, the system that we are the most familiar with today.
Yeah, he's the founding father of public schools.
Yes. There were people lurking behind him, which we will discuss in a moment, but...
But his main philosophy and idea, I think, was extremely pure and well-founded.
Sure.
Where it was just wanting to be able to give families and children a well-rounded education regardless of where they were at,
because and access to it.
Exactly, access as well, because these little house on the prairie schoolhouses were so far spread around because you had these big farmlands and a lot of kids were needed to help work, so they didn't get that education until
it was basically like the off season is when they'd go to school is what my understanding was. And then the school would be severely limited by the resources and the funds of the community that it served.
Right.
And so if you found a community that didn't value education, then the school would be in the pits.
Well, exactly. And it's not like the teachers got paid very much, if anything. Why do you think they are gifted apples? It was literally a form of this is as much as we can give.
Yeah.
What do they do with all those apples?
They must have really clean teeth. And I know the adage is an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but I don't know about that. But I do know that apples are pretty much nature's toothbrush.
They are.
Yeah.
Apple a day. So motorized school buses changed the movement. That all happened in like the 1920s is basically when that movement changed.
When America got all its money, well, figured out how to play with money.
This transition allowed for more specialized instruction because these big schoolhouses we had before, ages 5 to 16 basically, are all in the same classroom trying to learn the same thing. And even from my very limited experience of trying to teach a 3-year-old's education versus a 6-year-old's education, it's vastly different. In attention span, in material, in speed. I can't imagine managing a classroom of 40 kids of all different age groups and attention spans and needs.
Yeah.
So being able to get these students to where they need to go, to bigger places, where they can get that more specialized individual education that they need, I think was super important.
Of course. I think the attitude in behavior was different back then too.
Yeah.
There was a lot more of a stern hand and disciplinarian attitude that did follow over into the public school system.
Yes.
You toe the line, you do not distract, because you're going to take away from the other students. Like, how unfair of it, selfish of it, cause a scene or, be the center of attention when you're taking from somebody else's opportunity to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, what I wanted to talk about is our dear friend Rockefeller. Because Horace Mann was funded and had, a sugar daddy.
Rockefeller's sugar daddy.
So the Rockefellers, if you haven't looked them up, you should look them up, because
they're interesting.
One of America's most wealthiest families, pivotal, and gobs of money still to this day. But when the Rockefeller helped organize schools and public education system, he's quoted as saying that he needed a nation of employees, not thinkers. And so the inception of the public school program from the beginning was geared towards that as the end result. How do we turn the populace from farm workers to factory employees? Sure, we'll teach them how to read, but it's so they can read the instructions on how to do their job. We'll teach them how to sit and follow direction and to behave, but they got to listen for that bell, because that's their break. And then they got to be right back on time when that bell rings again, because we don't want stealing money from the corporation. It still carries through to this day. Absolutely. It is very regimented. Punctuality is very strict. Even when I was in school, attendance was instant. Some teachers would be like, I shut and lock my door the second the bell rings, and if you're late, and they would have these strict, harsh rules associated with it. It's just embedded in the culture of the system of we are creating employees. So the establishment, and the way the Rockefeller did this is by establishing that General Education Board. He was fundamental in that creation. And the General Education Board was established in 1902 by John D. Rockefeller with an initial donation of $1 million. So the GEB aimed to promote education in the United States without distinction of race, sex, or creed, which is, again, a noble goal, but it's basically saying we are going to iron out all differences, all different ideas, all
and it's
individuality.
It's tricky because you could argue that it's important to have everybody have an equal ground.
Sure.
You could make that argument.
And it is true. Everybody should, we do all deserve equal place at the table, regardless of our background and our identity and our sexual orientation. We do. But to just steamroll through those things of don't care. You're a body that can put together a widget. That's all that matters.
And that's where it gets messy.
Yeah, and so the GEB focused on improving the education primarily in the South and supporting higher education and modernizing farming practices. Now, the shift here is by the 1950s, the GEB had spent nearly all of its funds and closed in 1964. So it really just laid the groundwork and got things running. But Rockefeller was right because they needed the Reconstruction. The South was decimated. It was really hurt.
Yeah.
And so whenever there's crisis, there's also opportunity. And those with the money see the opportunity first, and they get in, and you watch, the next time we have a housing crisis, all those people with the money are going to start buying up all the foreclosures and then cash it in when things look good. Seriously, look at Amazon and all the businesses. They quadrupled their earnings through the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Businesses are closing because they're being forced to shut down because of COVID, and then you have these mega corporations that are just recording like sky high profits. And I digress. I get so frustrated with just how broken the system is by capital. Anyways, he also influenced higher education too, which I think is even more long-lasting. His influence, Rockefeller, when I say his influence on higher education and the medical institutions.
That's something that's really tricky because money talks. And so through a massive financial contribution, he basically made a whole bunch of reforms in medical standards and science-based systems in medical schools. So a lot of that is leading up to what was required, what was needed, and how much science was really going to back the medical practices that they're using. It was, I don't want to say unethical, but...
it was. What you see, though, with Rockefeller's influence, and especially in the medical schools, is he found a way to deem things as safe or scientific. Like, it needed his stamp of approval to continue.
Right.
And he only approved institutions and programs that were leaning heavily into the pharmaceutical drugs and quote unquote modern science.
Exactly.
And so anything that taught holistic or natural remedies was basically poo-pooed as woo-woo and crackery. And you see, they just disappeared. No one in medical schools, they stopped teaching that altogether. Up until that time, oh man, I've been reading this book.
I want to make a t-shirt. It's just like an Aaron t-shirt.
I've been reading this book. It's called Healing, the Divine Art. And what Rockefeller was fundamental in doing is splitting spiritual healing and materialistic healing, or materialistic science. We've talked on this before, where we live in a very materialistic age where everything has to be physical in order for it to be believed, trusted, endorsed. And our history as a species has not been that way. Like, we were healed by witch doctors and shaman and medicine men, and it's crazy hearing the accounts from antiquity of these healings that took place. Like in Greece, people were getting their eyesight back, like Christ-level miracles, because they understood the combination of science and spirit. But,
like alchemy?
Right. But what Rockefeller did is he owned pharmaceutical companies. And so anything that wasn't a pharmaceutical was, just hogwash. Like, why would you think a flower could make you feel better when you can buy this expensive drug? Like,
Well, it's frustrating now because, yes, I do believe in a lot of medicine and I do believe in modern science.
Of course.
However, it's frustrating to be studying holistic and natural remedies, and then you have to try and go to a natural grocer's, and it's 3 times the amount of money to try and do anything naturally. It's just like the adage of, why is it more expensive for me to go and buy all my fruits and vegetables from the grocery store than for me to just go to McDonald's every other day?
Because the powers that be want you sick and poisoned.
I don't want to be
That's
sick
why.
and poisoned.
So they pay you just enough to get by, to buy the bare minimum, which is poisoned and toxic and laced with hormones.
Except coffee. Coffee's from the gods.
No, this book, if you're interested in healings and medicine and stuff like that, you should definitely read this. It's written by Manly P. Hall, which I've talked about him before, but what it references is there's basically 2 reasons why we get sick, and one is a material cause. Air pollution, toxic sludge, bad food. There is a material reason that we can get sick. And our ancestors did not understand that material side.
No.
hence the plague and bacteria, and they were
was that
dirty.
The Black Plague with all the rats and stuff in the sewers?
Well, and then he was talking like the sewage was just on the street, and then they would have swine walk through the street and eat the sewage, and then they would eat the pig, and then our ancestors didn't understand the material side. We have come so far in understanding the material science, but in that leap, we have also fallen very far behind in the non-physical side, in the esoteric or the spiritual side of things.
The pendulum is swung the other way.
And so it's finding that balance of, there is a material reason, but there's also a non-material reason that you could be sick. It's fast. He says that like rheumatoid arthritis is linked to perfectionism.
Oof.
Or rigidity. You're unable to change. You're unable to release.
Yikes.
He has some pretty big claims. He says cancer is mostly caused by grief.
Oof.
And that's why it's more prevalent in women, because women have this adage of, we just bury our feelings deep down and we put on a smile and we move forward. And like, I've seen that in movies. I'm not a woman, so I can't speak to the firsthand experience, but I've heard that adage from like mother to daughter given in media many times of, we don't complain, we don't cry, we put on some rouge and we smile and we move on. And that's like, oh, okay. Lessons in burying trauma.
Okay, Mama Rose.
Like, for real, though.
Wow, though.
Anyways, I digress. Let's get back to education.
Right. Oh, gosh. So let's talk a little bit more about some more modern policies and reforms that have...
Yeah, because the system didn't end with Rockefeller.
No.
It has
Obviously,
been molding and adapting, since then.
Since then.
It has to perfect the propaganda.
That was just the beginnings, the humble beginnings. So in 2001, we had the No Child Left Behind Act. And that was aimed to improve educational outcome by holding schools accountable for each of their students' performances. That way, no kid is being left behind by, I'm sorry, what's the worst I'm trying to say?
It's like, it does exactly what it says.
It's, but I mean, like, to go on a deeper level, it's like, this student is struggling to read, instead of just going over their heads and like, well, they'll figure it out eventually. It's like, no, this child can't read or is not matching everybody else's level. Let's give them the time that they need. Let's give them resources that they need,
sure,
et cetera, et cetera.
But in practice, it was a disaster.
In practice, it was really tricky. And that's the thing. The positive effects were to try and to help students with those problem areas. And
I'm thinking mathematics,
basically any of your STEM subjects, but specifically mathematics, reading, and basic understanding of science or geometry or any of like the basic things that you need to be considered a successful human. And that's like a very noble cause, right? However, it didn't really show a lot of improvement, specifically in reading. Reading
none.
scores, not really any improvement. And then it also really shifted the time used in school towards math and reading and those subjects alone, basically.
Yeah,
so
started losing the arts.
Yes, so anything creative, a lot of science-based stuff was taken out, world understanding, social skills, anything like that was just kind of shunned. I remember there were times where you would have almost an hour block a day for reading and math, and then you'd have like a 20-minute lesson on social studies, or just like a basic history lesson, which, guys, I feel like for me, history is one of the most important things to learn, and that's one of the first things that can get cut in a curriculum.
Which is crazy, because everyone, like liberal and conservative alike, they love to say, if you don't understand history, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Right.
It's like the most quoted little
Right.
adage. But then, of course, it's the first thing that gets cut.
No, exactly. Well, and because they shifted all this time, and because it was such a massive focus, it also changed the way that teachers and students alike were tested on the knowledge of these kids. So for me, personally, I am a very good student. I feel as though I'm a fairly intelligent human being, but I'm an absolutely dreadful tester.
Oh, I'm the worst student.
But, and I love you, but this drives me crazy about you. That's the thing, because I can tell you all about a certain subject, but then you sit me down to take a 30-minute test on it, I'm gonna bomb it almost every time. I would have all my straight A's because I was a fantastic student, all this jazz, and then I'd fail almost every single one of my tests.
The pressure and the anxiety of
The
it.
anxiety would destroy me. I wouldn't sleep. I'd study, and then I would just mix things up because I wasn't sure of the answers. Like, I would be like, I'm pretty sure it's A, but I don't know. I'm probably wrong. So I'm going to answer C. And of course, it was always the one I thought it was at first.
And like, let's talk about that with the tests, because the way in the standardized testing,
Yes.
and really what this No Child Left Behind did, it put the teachers at risk. It was basically like, look, if your student is failing, you're failing. Like, you are the problem. And so, from my perspective, it really didn't fix anything. It just kind of shuffled things around so that teachers could get everyone through on the base level, and no one was really excelling. And instead of making sure that no kids were left behind, it pulled everyone down. Like, the whole class just dumbed down from this because they had to teach at the slowest student's speed, which, like, that's not an insult.
No. I was just thinking of my own, because I was testing so poorly all throughout elementary school, because I'm a fantastic reader.
Yeah.
But all through elementary school, they kept putting me in specialized programs because I was testing so poorly. They just assumed I couldn't read. They assumed I couldn't communicate. And then I'm sitting at this table with all these other kids who were struggling.
Yeah.
And I'm helping them figure out how to read and how to do the stuff. And so they'd send me back to class, but then my tests would still be poor.
Because all that matters is the test.
Yeah.
They don't care about critical thinking or problem solving. And that's, I think, that is my biggest issue with the way the schooling program is built. Even through higher education.
Yeah.
It's not a place to learn skills of critical thinking. Well, it's become a place of regurgitation. It's become a system of regurgitation.
Yes.
It's become, I tell you the answer, you memorize answer, and then you spit it up on the test. And then as soon as the test is over, you flush it away.
Oh, yeah. Just
Flush. It's gone. Like,
absolutely.
I couldn't tell you anything about 95% of what I learned through school.
And it's translating now into people in the workforce where they'll have to prepare this big presentation, they'll do this big sales pitch, and then the instant it's done,
Flush.
gone.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see that as adults as well, because a lot of combativeness I get with homeschool versus public school is the social aspect and being able to communicate on that
seems to
level.
be the biggest critique when we tell people we're homeschooling. Well, what about their friends and their peers?
Which, understandable.
Sure,
being at
but
home, I'm not going to be surrounded by 30 different kids from 30 different backgrounds every day. And that is something that I personally loved growing up, and I loved that social aspect of it. However, it's going back to that point I was making before, it's apparent now that a lot of people are not thinking as much as they used to. It's so much easier just to give the quick answer. It's so much easier just to give your basic 5 responses that you give to any other person. It's very machine-like almost. And so to find that genuine connection, to find actual... This makes it sound so bad, because I'm not saying that people don't know how to critically think, but I feel like a lot of us are on like a default setting.
Like they're asleep or, unconscious and they're being... What about free will? But it's true, because that's how we were educated to be. We were brought up to just regurgitate and spit up exactly what we're told is a fact, not to question it. In fact, I remember as a student, I struggled with math. Because I'm definitely more of a creative side.
Sure.
And so math was a harder concept for me to understand at times. I wasn't the worst math student, but my dad is really good at math.
Yeah.
He's really good with numbers.
So's mine.
And yeah, weird. It's a masculine trait. Anyways, so I would go home with my homework and ask for help. And one of two things would happen. My dad would either teach me the way he knew how to solve the problem, and all the teachers were like, you have to show your work. And so you come back and the work doesn't look like the work they want to see. And they're like, what is this garbage? And you're like, I got the answer. And they're like, but you didn't make the little boxes that you put your numbers in, and you didn't cross these the way we taught you to cross them. And you're like, so? Or my dad would try and learn a whole new system, basically. He would like ask for my textbook and learn to solve the problem the way they are teaching you to solve the problem. And it would take forever. And
like a 20-minute assignment turns into... I would spend hours, literally hours in my math book just trying, because I would do the same thing where I would do the work and I would do all the numbers correctly, and then I'd still end up with the wrong answer at the end. Mathematics was really tricky, and numbers flip really easy. So at least in my brain, so I'll be writing what I think is a 6, and then it actually looks like a 9. So when I go back and work my work,
but you've got like some number dyslexia that you've come to realize in adulthood.
Hey,
that was undiagnosed, and my family has a complicated history with the public school system because, my mom was all about phonics and arithmetic, and
your mom's brilliant.
Thank you, she is,
and your handwriting is immaculate. So thank you, Stacy.
Yeah,
for teaching my husband how to write, and so much better than me.
I get complimented on my handwriting all the time, and I'm like, thank you. But anyways, it was funny, just the battles that would come from that. Like, I remember they wanted to put some of my siblings into resource, and my mom's like, no.
Resource super helped me.
No, and she was like, no, like it does no good. Like my child has a tutor outside. We're working through this. There's a learning disability. Like there's a lot of dyslexia in my family. My grandpa is a dyslexic, but he's brilliant.
Yeah.
And
he's left-handed, right? Unrelated.
So's my dad. Anyways, but they wouldn't listen to her. And so they were like, look, you're either going to put her into resource or we're going to just make it happen. Like, you don't know what's good for your own kid. And so my mom, in her fashion, in her Scorpio energy, was like, done. We're pulling her out of school.
Which, thank goodness.
Right. So half of my siblings went through the full public school system. Most of us did. My youngest two did a lot of homeschooling and a lot of tutoring and a lot of different types of education.
It's really frustrating as a parent hearing that story, because I remember starting to get ready to put my girls into school, and I wanted to just start with a half-day program.
Oh yeah, they wouldn't allow us.
Well, my kids were raised through COVID. We are really connected as a unit. I was just nervous, and I just wanted to see what options I had. So I got lectured for 20 minutes on how terrible of a choice it would be to put my child in a half day, because I can technically pull her out whenever I want, but she will be stunted with her education. She won't make any friends. And would I want to disservice my child that way? How selfish I'm being. For 20 minutes from this stranger, when I just asked what would the options if I wanted to do a half-day program for my child.
Well, and not only that, when we told people we were homeschooling, you had some relations that sent you scores of material on how better it is to go through the public school program and how we're making the wrong choice and which is crazy, because kids that are homeschooled traditionally outperform public school children.
And a lot of that has to do with the individual schoolwork and the individual attention that they will get. I guarantee that a student who is struggling to write their name correctly, if they're in a class of 30, are going to continue having that issue until either their parent steps in or their teacher takes separate time outside of class time to help them with that. And there are incredible teachers who would be willing to do that, but they won't be getting paid for it. They already do so much within their day. Oof, guys, being a teacher is exhausting.
Of course it is. And that's why none of this is geared toward teachers. Like, they do the best they can most of the time. But Yeah, I mean, you brought up my handwriting already.
Mm-hmm.
My mom sat with me by my side as I did sheets of letters,
Mm-hmm.
sheets of capital lowercase letters. Like, my handwriting looks very similar to my mother's.
Yeah.
But that's why I got this very personalized attention from the beginning on how to form my letters
Mm-hmm.
and how to write in a line and how to space things properly. And I don't think most students got that.
No.
Most kids my age, and you see it with handwriting. Everybody complains about their handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in the latest Apple iOS update, they're like, you can write and the AI will make your handwriting look like yours, but it'll make it look nice. And everybody's like all excited about it. I'm like, that's dumb. Like,
Well, it's oof. One, I can't imagine being a teacher, especially in a high school or junior high grade range where AI is another thing you're going to have
For
to
real.
battle. Because that's the other thing is this memorized to test format is just not going to work with the way that our brains function now. We have so much knowledge. We have such quick access to knowledge. Why do we need to memorize A, B, and C when we can, first off, learn more about it by doing a ChatGPT search?
yeah.
And it's really cutting a lot of the work. So people aren't thinking or trying to think about what they're learning about. They're just trying to find the shortest way to get
Human
the assignment
nature.
done.
Human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would ask Cha-Cha to answer
Oh my
most of my
gosh,
questions.
Cha-Cha.
I would be in my room in the basement texting Cha-Cha like, what is this?
Oh, see, I was like, I can't remember the name of this Ninja Turtle.
You know, I use Cha-Cha very intentionally. Because after a while, they started charging for it.
Yeah.
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 Anyways, the other thing that drives me nuts about the school is just its structure.
Yeah.
So we've already kind of talked about the emphasis of discipline, which is a necessity when you have a large class. And
do.
It's any misbehavior is going to be deemed as unruly and unacceptable. And just knowing of how psychology works, when you start getting scolded and told that you are away, like, you're such a naughty child, like, why do you misbehave? Why do you cause problems? And you hear adults talking about how naughty you are and how you misbehave, that's who you become. It's what you learn to believe about yourself. And the opposite is true as well. When you overhear teachers talking about how such a brilliant student she is and how
It's the
great
Megamind
she is.
effect.
Yeah, you hear it and it ingrains in you and it puts that pressure on you. Like, then you have to always be perfect or there's no hope. Like, why I might as well just be a troublesome teen because there's no hope. And so it programs you that way. And then the school day itself is just structured around 9-to-5 jobs.
It is. And again, I really try to not be as skeptical.
I am so
I
skeptical.
know you're but one of the benefits of public school is that it works really well for parents who do work a 9-to-5. And right now, many parents, both parents have to work 9-to-5 jobs. So childcare is so simple when you're able to go into the public school system, because then you get to drop off your kids,
Yep.
go to work, and then
It all
hopefully
just lines up.
Yes, it all lines up really well, and that's intentional.
Yes. Very intentional. It's made that way to not only prepare the child, the student, to join the workforce as a 9-to-5 employee, but then it also, it incentivizes the parents to use the public school system because it is so easy, and then it gives you no options. You become trapped.
Yeah.
It's like the way you get trapped is so crazy to me, and we've talked about it with our religious upbringing. It's like, I got home from my mission, you were freshly into school, we're encouraged to marry young, have children quickly, take on all these financial responsibilities, and then when you do start to actually wake up and open your eyes to what reality is, your options are reduced slim to none because you have all these responsibilities. You have mouths to feed, you have bills to pay, you have loans that you need to pay back, you have student loans that will never go away even with a bankruptcy, because that seems great, for, it's just all entrapment to keep you in the system, to keep you a participant in the structure that serves the powers above the best. That's how I see it. It's all geared towards that end. How can they incentivize us to make as little as possible, to eat the poison, to watch the TV, to escape from our mundane, boring lives? I'm going to get on another soapbox. But that's what it is. And so, of course, it's going to be easier to do the public school system. Of course it is.
Of course it is. And there are times where it would be really nice to have that break.
Sure.
I love being a parent. I do. But the idea of having a couple hours where I could work, get some extra money, or I could have some time alone, or I could clean one room of the house without stepping into the mess of another room.
Yeah, or self-care for a minute.
What?
Like, you could get your hair done, like, right? No, it's so appealing in those ways. But then, again, it's crazy to me because when we did look up homeschool, the material that you needed to teach on a daily basis could be accomplished in, what, an hour and a half?
3 hours at most. At most.
And yet we send our kids for 7 hours, right? 7 or 8 hours a day.
As early as 4 years old.
To just sit and be lectured and indoctrinated and, oh my goodness gracious.
And, sorry, this is really heavy for me. It's really heavy for me because I know so many parents that want the best for their kids. And
who doesn't? We all want the best for our kids.
And it's just, and the same thing with the teachers. I feel like there's so many people who want the best and are trying their best. It's just hard. I feel like it's really hard when you get humans in general as a group. We're kind of the worst, but individually I feel like humans are absolutely phenomenal.
See, and I feel like we're only the worst in a group because of the ignorance. And I think what I'm trying to get at here is the public education system is not designed to educate.
No.
It is designed to program and pump our brains full of propaganda. Every morning I stood up and pledged allegiance to the American flag with my heart over my chest.
Your heart over your chest?
I mean, my hand over my heart.
That's pretty aggressive.
Right? No, but really, like every morning, stood up, put my hand over my chest, said the Pledge of Allegiance. I was told different things, and like our education was so interlaced with the religion of the
Utah
society.
Studies?
Like, what's that?
Utah Studies?
Not even that. I felt like it was everywhere. There was religious tones in most subjects. Yeah.
Granted, we went to, this is college. We went to a church school.
Oh, don't get me started there.
But that's not public school.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a different thing. But really, you're just taught propaganda. You're taught to believe America is the greatest country in the world. You're taught to believe that we can do no wrong, that we have it all figured out, that that we've always done the right thing, that we've won every war, that we're always on the good guys' side.
Napalm never existed.
We never napalmed Japan or North Korea. We never burnt two nations to the ground.
They just don't like us.
And even though we did, they deserved it because they bombed our military base, and so we're gonna burn their cities and hospitals and their women and children, and we're always the good guys. Like, and then it's basically just propaganda. And then my favorite is you learn about propaganda in school, and it's like, this was only used in World War II, and it was comical cartoons of big noses, and obvious, how silly of the German people to believe this nonsense. But that's what it is. It's nonsense. And you're like, no, it's everywhere. It's everything you say to me. It's every action, everything you do is propaganda. Like,
it's You know what's funny? Because I'm going through like a Rolodex in my head of all my teachers. And my favorite teachers I had were always the ones who pushed me to think harder and to think differently. I had one history teacher who she was just really good at debate. Like she would debate with the students.
I love that.
And she was for me, it was really intimidating because I'm not confrontational at all. So I'd ask a question and she would just be like, well, I don't know. Why is that a problem? I'm like, well, because it doesn't seem very kind to do. Okay, but if America's the best country in the world, then why is that an issue? Because we're hurting people. Exactly. That's why. So then she would get into this big discussion and she would get in trouble with a lot of parents because of doing that.
I had a history teacher that I would get in trouble.
History.
It is weird.
Or English. I have a lot of English teachers.
Yes, English and history are the two that you would come home with and it would ruffle feathers.
Yeah.
I had a history teacher that I took AP. I failed the AP test. I didn't even take the AP test half the time, but I loved the class.
Of course.
I love learning it, but the test, I was like, not interested. Do not care. So I took AP European History and
Amazing.
AP American History.
Amazing.
And it was from the same teacher. And she was a phenomenal teacher. But I would come home with some of her information and there were heated discussions at the dinner table over it of
I'm sure.
like women's suffragette movement but it's because education and schools are a heated location. I mean, look at our political environment that we're in now.
Right.
Schools and university campuses are at the center of this freedom of speech debate most of the time.
Yes.
And universities are constantly being accused of being woke and having a liberal agenda and not giving ample space for all perspectives. And that's because of how pivotal these learning centers are. When you're in these environments, you're learning how to, you're framing how you see the world, how you see reality. And so in a fascist state, not saying we're in one, but, you be the judge. In a fascist state, the government likes to come in and control the narrative of these schools. They want schools to teach traditional values that reinforce the patriarchy. They want schools to uphold conservative, usually, ideas. They want to, and where they can't quiet dissent, where they can't silence dissent, they like to flood it with over information, with just scores of information. So
you know what would have been really great? Could someone have taught me how to balance a checkbook?
Yeah, and that's the thing. They don't even teach like real life skills in elementary school.
I learned how to bake cookies in home economics.
You learn all sorts of things about all sorts of things that are completely useless. I couldn't even tell you. I don't even know what I learned in school.
Jeremy Bearimy?
Jeremy Bearimy. That broke me. I'm digressing.
No, and the thing that's so hard. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the base question. Let's go back to. So, what do you think? What is the benefit of public schools, or why do we have them?
I think we had them initially to create fairness and to try and give access to the full population. There are many very wise people who speak out against ignorance and how education is the only cure for ignorance. And so that is, in fact, the founding fathers even say like an uneducated or ignorant populace cannot govern itself. It is destined to fail. And so I think the roots were pretty noble. But I think those in power saw this, have seen this, and have used their influence to critique the education system, to form the population into what they want us to be. And it just speaks so much that some of the most successful people alive today, or some of the most successful creators of businesses and art, have dropped out of school. And they are proud of it. And they have no remorse for wanting nothing to do with it. When we're
Exactly.
all told, like, go to school, get good grades, get a good job. Go to school, get good grades, get a good job. Like, that is the structure.
Throw in college in there somewhere.
I mean, but that's part of go to school for
That's
me.
fair.
It's like, go get an education and then get a good job. Become a CEO somewhere. Go to school for business, and then you can be used for anything. But like, look at Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, what's his name? Richard Branson.
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg even dropped out. Like,
It's a fairly common phraseology where it's phraseology.
yeah, that works.
It's a very common thing to say, like, test scores don't mean you're the smartest kid in class.
No.
It just means that you can study well or be educated well
Or memorize.
well.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that people with good grades aren't intelligent. It's just
Not at all. The thing with education on a whole is it pushes you to conform.
Yeah.
Even in the social structures. I know we get a lot of heat for like, your girls aren't going to make friends. Okay, I made a couple friends in school. And like, I don't have any real friends that I was with in school because I've changed so much that I don't even fit what I was back then. And even when I was in school, I wasn't one of the popular kids. And there was teasing and ridicule, and I never wore the right clothes. And
Well, and I don't know if that's so much the public system as much as the school culture that's been developed. I think of just like pop culture and media, like Mean Girls and Heathers and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, like all of these things that were basically, if you weren't the rich, popular, cool kid, then you're probably going to be
preyed on.
Yeah. And I remember, oh my goodness, because I wasn't unpopular in school.
We were theater kids. So
kids.
we had theater friends.
We did. So we weren't lonely, but we weren't the cool kids.
Not in the slightest.
No, but I remember I moved my senior year. And so I went my final year of high school to a different school. And I mean, I was lucky enough I got into like a choir. And so I had kind of groups of people, but I still was bullied. I had, you remember those jumbo pixie sticks? I had a kid pour one of those on top of my head first day of school because you just thought it was funny and I was new and I wasn't going to do anything.
I had my nipple ripped off in school.
Hey!
Because some kid saw I had a terrible sunburn and thought that would be a great time to give me a nipple twister.
Well, I was new. You were a ginger. I didn't, guys, this is probably one of the cringiest high school moments. I couldn't get a date to prom for my senior prom because I didn't know anybody.
Yeah, and the school we grew up in, because you graduated from the school that I went to.
Yeah.
I went to all 3 years of it, but you just went senior year.
Yeah.
It was notorious for being the clickiest school in the state. It was. I would meet friends from other neighboring high schools, and they'd be like, "You like it there? Like, isn't it so clicky?" And it was.
It was.
Oh,
like,
it
being
was.
outside of it, it felt like an early 2000s movie.
All the arts classes were in the north end of the building, and all like the gym and the sports classes were in the south. And so there was even terms like, "Oh, are you a north ender or a south ender?"
I haven't heard that in years.
And like the north enders parked in the north parking lot by the art classes, and the south enders were by the field.
Those uneducated jocks.
But there were much more of them, and we were just like, we were high on our own supply.
Have you heard Les Mis?
Yeah. Listen to Wicked. It will change your life. Anyways.
Oh, gosh. No, so I couldn't get a date to my senior prom. So my dad was super sweet, and he had an intern that went to one of the high schools nearby, and he had like mentioned that I didn't have a date and gave him my number. And so this super sweet guy that my dad worked with called me up, and we went on this blind date for my senior prom, and it was super sweet, and it was probably the best date I went on in high school because there was no strings attached, and it was great, but it was also just like in the back of my brain like, oh, I didn't get asked out to prom.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Obviously, it's fine. I'm super chill about this.
No, there was such a thing about it. For me, it was like, if it's a boys' choice dance, I had to go.
Yeah.
Like, it was enforced. Like, I had to ask somebody, I had to go. Because how awful would it be for them not to be, you know what I mean? For me to take the spot, to keep one girl, like, to prevent another girl from going to this event.
What a weird masculine.
No, it was a requirement.
responsibility.
No, it was a requirement. It was like, I don't want to go to junior prom. And it's like, no, you have to, because there's a girl that wants to go that hasn't been asked yet, and you need to go ask somebody type of energy.
Oosh.
And
Oosh.
yeah, which is funny. I used junior prom as an example because that was the only one I didn't go to. That was the only dance that I found a way to get myself out of.
No, I'm not saying that if you choose to homeschool or unschool your child that that they're not going to have their own issues and trauma stories and things like that.
They will.
But there are options. It isn't a one size fit all, I think. Because I think everyone in the back of their brain is like, oh, I knew this homeschooled family. And they were, you know what I mean? And there was like 20 of them. Well, I mean, we're in Utah, so it was like, were they polygamous?
Yeah, they were the polygamous family by Kay's Cross. They would chase you on their four-wheelers when you snuck down there to kiss girls.
Our high school experiences were so different.
Did you never go to Kay's Cross?
No.
I'll take you sometime.
Oh,
you have to
no.
trespass on polygamous land, though. So
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's a little dicey.
See, I never sloughed class.
Man, I sloughed so much. I cut class. One time I cut class, I had a math teacher that I just loathed.
Ugh.
Just could not stand the man. And so it was my birthday, and I had his class. And I was like, screw this. I'm not going to this dumb math class on my birthday. And so I just hung out in the theater room. Like, literally just hung out in the theater room. And then I went to my theater class, which was right after. And he saw me, like, in the hallway. And he was livid that he knew I had cut his class. It's like, yeah, man, you're a gremlin.
I sloughed class one time.
And you probably got an ulcer.
No. I went up to my teacher the period before and said, hey, I'm not going to be in class, but it's because there's this girl in our class and it's her birthday. And so me and the class president are going to go home and finish baking her a cake. And then we're going to bring it to the end of class. Is that cool with you?
Oh my gosh.
And she was like, why did you tell me you were going to just slough class? It's not like you're behind. Yeah, it's not like you're fine. And I'm just like having a panic attack beforehand. I'm like, I'm just trying to be nice.
See, and I knew if a police officer, which did happen, came and found you while you were out and about being truant, you just told them you were in seminary because they couldn't do anything. So I had seminary all the time.
See, cops, I used to tutor at West High School when we were first married. So I was in my early 20s, and cops would stop me all the time because I wasn't in class during class hours because I wasn't a student. And they would get so mad at me because they're like, why aren't you in class? I'm like, I'm not a student. Yes, you are. Why are you here in school? Because I'm a tutor. Yeah, let me see your ID. So I'd show my ID.
You're like, sir. First of all, you don't need to show a cop your ID.
I know. I was scared.
I know. Ignorance.
And this is West High.
Yeah.
This is West High.
That's Utah Edge.
Anyway. So what are the benefits if we haven't deterred you from public school?
Then you haven't listened closely enough.
What are options that you have? What are some options if you are considering not doing the public school system to still get your child educated? Because you do want education for yourself and for your kids, and
absolutely.
It's essential.
Ignorance is a disease.
Excuse me.
Like, we are born into ignorance, and it is our responsibility to learn and grow and understand out of that. But literally the scriptures say you cannot be saved in ignorance. And
Ignorance is bliss, though.
yeah, because you're dumb. You were talking about what's her face?
Oh, yeah, we were talking. So The Great Gatsby. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bit where Daisy, she has this little daughter, this little 4-year-old daughter, and she says, I hope that my girl grows up to be a beautiful fool, a beautiful little fool, because of all of the pain and suffering that Daisy has had to go through, because she understands, because she has knowledge, because she's learned. It's so much easier to go through life without having to know anything at all. So if you're pretty and you're dumb, life is just fine.
Yeah, but
But
when you're dumb, you are controlled by the slightest breeze. Mm-hmm. When you are ignorant, you fall for all the traps. Mm-hmm. You are the most gullible. You know, it's hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
With anything and everything. And the last thing that I want to get onto is I feel like we are all ignorant.
Yeah.
As a country, we are completely ignorant. And we're proud of our ignorance in a lot of ways. Which is so funny because we're told that we are growing up or living through the age of information. We've talked about it already tonight. You can, at your fingertips, you can ask the internet any question. You can even put it on a public forum and ask real people to respond to any question. But we're some of the most ignorant people around, I would argue.
Yeah.
And again, I believe it's by design. We have the algorithms and the news that we watch and the media that we take in. We've created these echo chambers, and we have we've created this cognitive dissonance and this confirmation bias, which means you look for information that supports what you already feel or already believe.
Yeah.
And you can find articles that support anything.
Of course.
You just type in what you want confirmed, and 100 articles will pop up, and they'll be like, of course you're right. Here is the reasons.
Of course, because we have so many people. This world has so many people in it. There's bound to be somebody else who's written something that agrees with your way of thinking.
Yeah. And then the algorithms see what you're interested in. It's like, oh, this person is a conservative, a religious conservative. And it just starts feeding you conservative religious material on repeat, on repeat. And it gets edgier and edgier, and it gets deeper and deeper into that trench. And you never hear the perspective of the little trans boy. You know, you never hear the perspective of the immigrant. You just hear about how those are the people that are ruining society. They're the ones that are scapegoated. You never hear their perspective. You're never able to give them empathy and see where they're coming from. And the opposite is just as true. You get into the liberal column of things, and it's like, conservatives are so dumb. They're the dumbest. They're dumb. And you're like, they're not. But you fall into that liberal silo of, can you believe them, how dumb they are? And you're like, yeah, but then you fall in the conservative one, and there's the same videos. Can you believe how dumb liberals are? And it's like, good Lanta.
It's so funny because even just doing content creation, you get so many people who say so many ridiculous, silly things. I did a little video about Twilight, of all things, just asking a random question, and I had so many people who messaged me and just like, yeah, absolutely, same thing, like all on the same page. And then other people calling me the biggest idiot in the world because I obviously didn't understand A, B, and C. And I'm like, this was first off, this was supposed to be funny. This was comedy, humor thing. Why are we all getting so heated about something so silly?
Yeah. I mean, we had that one post that went psycho bonkers for weeks. And so it's like, yeah, when something comes up that you don't agree with, you get bullied into it. Angie posted something about living authentically, about me being bi, and it had some photos, and the response was so toxic, just so angry. And from both sides. Like, so we had the Bible Belt telling us we're going to hell and we needed to repent. And then we had the LGBTQ community saying, you don't belong here. You're not gay enough. And it's like, oh my gosh, people.
I wish I were more gay.
Or less. Like, I guess.
No, always more gay. Always.
But Brene Brown talks about that in her book, Braving the Wilderness. What we really need to do as a society to break this trend is stop trying to live in these camps of us versus them, of this is my group and you're the bad guys.
Agreed.
We need to be more comfortable living between those two camps of like, here's the aspects of me that I agree with, that align. The example she uses is she has guns.
Yeah.
She goes target shooting and clay pigeon shooting, and she grew up shooting guns. But she supports some forms of gun control because, you know, and that's another reason we haven't really sent our kids to school. Yeah. There's a real fear of that.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I support some gun control measures, but I also own guns. And so with my liberal friends, they're like, you redneck heathen, I can't believe you own a gun. And then she sees her conservative friends and they're like, you blue-tard liberal, I can't believe you support gun control. And she's like,
where do you go?
They both just try to pull her into the other camp and to hate the opposing team. And she's like, we can't do that. You have to sit in the middle and be uncomfortable sitting in the middle of like, nope, this is where I am. This is where I stand. I don't need to conform 100% to feel like I quote unquote belong.
Exactly. And I would argue that's one other thing that really pulls people into putting their kids into public school when they don't necessarily want to. I have many mom friends who are so scared that their kids are going to get made fun of, that their kids aren't going to have anyone else, that they're not going to get them as a parent are not going to be able to give their kids the education that they need to be successful. And so it's made very easy to put your child in public school rather than do. And again, I'm not trying to push you one way or the other. You're going to have to follow your intuition and do what's best.
Yep.
But I struggle with the idea of people being scared or pushed in a direction that they don't feel comfortable with, especially when it comes to their children, because they're afraid of the consequences that their children might face.
Yeah. So if you do send your child to public school, it's not the end of the world.
No.
All I would recommend and suggest is to be very active, as active as you can be in your child's education.
That's what saved me in high school.
My parents were very active. I got pulled out of a class because my teacher was screaming at me. I was in second grade, and I was showing up late to school, which, as a second grader, that is not my control.
No.
Like, I understand that as an adult, but I would show up probably a few minutes late most mornings because I was the oldest of 3 at the time, and we would walk to school because it was just around the corner. Anyways, I was late, and I would get yelled at, and I didn't even know to tell my mom that I was getting yelled at. I didn't even know that was an issue.
Second grade.
Exactly. And one morning we were going to be late. I was very conscious of the time that morning. I remember this morning. I was very conscious of the time
in general.
Because it was like ingrained in me that if you're late, then you're showing up as a failure.
Yeah.
And so very conscious of the time, and I knew before we even left the house that we were going to be late to my class. And my mom picked up on my insecurity and my fear, and she's like, nope, we're going to go. And I was like, Mom, it'd be better if I just don't go. Like, that was my attitude of like, if I'm going to be late, it'd be better for me to just miss class than for me to be late. And she's like, no. You're going to be late. We're going to go. We're going to be late. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And so, yeah, I walked into class, and I remember hanging up my coat, putting my lunch bag up in the little cubby, and I remember my teacher making this big scene in front of the whole class about like, look who decided to roll in, and she starts yelling at me, telling me how second grade, telling me how awful it is, how I've ruined things. And unbeknownst to me, my mom was standing right outside the classroom listening to the whole thing. And so as my teacher is in the heat of "You piece of garbage," my mom just turns the corner and she's like, "Do we have a problem?" And the blood from that woman's face just flushed to her feet instantly.
Oh, yeah.
And
Parents...
And my mom was like, "Aaron, grab your coat, grab your things. We are leaving." And I never went back to that school or that classroom again. Like,
Good.
literally, I was removed from that classroom. But I would have just sat there and been yelled at the whole rest of the year if my mom hadn't been an active participant in my education.
Parents have so much power.
Absolutely, they do.
In school, and I feel as though a lot of times they're not given that power. So I'm starting up my own preschool, pre-K program, and I had this mom come up to me. She's really interested. She's got these twin boys, super cute, and she's like, "We're going to be late most days. I have 3 other kids. This is a lot for me to handle, and I want to do the early morning class, but it's early, so I'm probably going to be late." I'm like, "Yeah, that's up to you guys. If you miss anything, I'll keep it aside for you. It's not a big deal. You're not going to be charged. The kids aren't going to be punished." Because that's how life works. And why should I punish children for something that isn't in their control? And with life in general, it's just so unpredictable. And as a parent, life is so unpredictable. I can plan. My little brain is like, okay, so we need to be there at 12. So that means I have to start getting everybody prepped to go around 9, which means we have to have the bags ready to go around like 9:15. Like, I have to do this hours in advance, and we're still probably going to be late.
Yeah.
It's the more involved parents are, I think we're all, teachers and parents have the same goal of wanting the best for the child in that they're teaching.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah. If it's a good teacher.
If it's a good teacher.
And most are.
Most are. And I feel bad because I feel like there's so many teachers who will get docked or get in trouble if their students are late. Or
yeah,
because
that's how the public system is built.
It's part of the system.
And the teacher is judged based on the student's performance. And so there is that.
I'm so drained for them. I do not miss that. I do not miss that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the more involved I think parents are, the better it's going to be.
And that's just in your child's life in general, I would say. So yeah, give them the time, give them the attention as much as you can. If you don't have children, then great.
That's totally.
You put that attention wherever you need it to go.
Go get a drink on me.
But when you have a child, like, you have an obligation, you have a responsibility and a duty, I would say.
Duty.
Really, though, it is, you have that calling now, and there is a piece of you. I'm not saying lose yourself. I'm not saying be the stay-at-home dad or the stay-at-home mom that they live for their children, but you have a responsibility to give a part of yourself to them every day in whatever form you can make that work.
Exactly.
That's just me speaking as a dad. So this has gone on for a minute. We've kind of delved into our soapboxes of the education system, but I'm telling you guys, once you knock over that first domino, the whole castle just crumbles so quickly.
It does. I want to do like a quick little overview. Just a little bit overview. More like a pros and cons list, because that's how Angie's brain works.
I love it.
So, pros of public school. It's very convenient for anyone who's working a day job. It's very convenient. It's very easy access. You can find them anywhere. And I would argue most teachers, most administratives have the best interests at heart, and your child will have, for the most part, a great upbringing.
Yeah.
It's and you know what? There's a lot of beautiful programs that are a part of it. Arts are coming back in a lot of ways. There is, for those families who struggle, there are support systems, there are food, there's a lot of beautiful things there that you might not get in other child care facilities, as well as it is, for the most part, a free program, whereas other Montessori, charter schools, things like that, for a pre-K program for 5 days a week, it was going to cost almost $2,200 a month.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was including meals and education and all the things that were included in this package. And that's just a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. And most people can't afford that.
No.
And again, it is designed that way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do need to use the public school system,
there's beautiful things there.
There is. It's not all bad. But
what are the cons?
There are risks with it. There's definitely risks. You don't know what they're teaching your student, what they're teaching your child all day long. You don't know what behavior patterns they are reinforcing or what psychological conditioning that they are implementing into the child just to make the whole classroom, like the classroom as a whole, orderly and submissive and obedient. You don't know. You're not there. And as a child, a lot of the times you don't know that things are an issue.
Yeah.
And so your child might not even be telling you in words. So if all you're doing is asking, like, how was school today? Did anything good happen? Anything bad happen? They might not be able to label it as either of those events. So you would need to watch for emotions and emotional responses and triggers in your child. You have to be aware. The other thing, it does not foster a sense of creative problem solving or creative thinking. And so finding outlets outside of the public school system that can encourage that type of growth would be fundamental. Any type of problem solving. For me, I had Boy Scouts that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And just different things like that. Sports is really good. Anything that requires creative problem solving would help. But I will preach this forever. If you are able to, if you have the means, public education is not the best road. It's just not.
It's just...
You're not damaging or ruining your child if it's your only option.
No.
Because you can, through your effort and your care, supplement where it falls short. But it is not the best option by a long shot.
And if you just want to look at the test results, if you take a student who's been homeschooled versus a child who's been in the public school system, funny enough, which ones are going to test higher? Those are going to be your homeschooled students.
Yeah, every time.
It's every time. That's science. So let's talk about homeschool, private school. I guess not private school, but just homeschool education done by parents rather than teachers. Pros of that is you get to choose when, where, and how your child is taught, which is, depending on the family, super vital and important. You're able to teach your child the things that they might filter out in school systems. They also will get the attention that they will not get in a classroom of 30 kids. You'll be able to be taught how to write the way that your mom knows how to write. If you do have a problem with something, they're going to be able to give you more of their time because, funny enough, they're going to be more invested in you because they're your parent rather than your teacher.
Yeah.
Another thing is there's so much more to be learned within a critical and creative process of education in the home rather than through the structured curriculum of the public school system. That sounded like a lot of mumbo jumbo words.
No, it makes sense. Yeah. Okay. A few of the cons is, you might just be passing along your preconceived biases and conditioned beliefs to your child. So you really have to be open to viewing both sides of an issue as you're especially teaching about history and science and psychology and these other topics that aren't just black and white. Like learning how to read is pretty black and white. Like you learn the letters, you choose if you're going to do sight words or phonetics, and you go down the path. But if you're teaching politics and critical thinking, you yourself are going to have to be open to the other perspective. Other cons is it takes more time. It takes
the parent
energy.
Burnout is real.
And it's a different type of energy. Teaching your child how to do these skills, you're going to take the role it's a different role. You're not just going to be mom or dad. You are going to be teacher as well. And so having that authority and that discipline over the child in those settings can be difficult because, you know, they've got to sit down and learn when you're doing homeschool. Other cons is it can be expensive because you're going to lose the time that it takes to work, or you're going to have to spend more money in tutors or homeschool programs and resources to facilitate that at-home learning. But I think the benefits outweigh the cons if you can make it fit with your schedule. I mean, we don't live too high above the poverty line, and we're making a way to make it work because it's a priority to us.
It is.
That's the long and short of it. I would rather do this than drive fancy cars. Like, I would rather have my children taught at home than have you work a job while they're gone. But other cons.
I just thought of another pro, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So something that's really difficult within the school system is being able to learn outside of the classroom. Obviously, when you are homeschooling when you're homeschooling your child, you have the ability to take them anywhere you want to be able to educate them. So if you want to educate them while you're hiking, you can do that. If you're wanting to teach about different planets, you can take them to the planetarium. You have so many more sources and resources. The con of that is it's all coming out of your pocket. It's all coming out of your mind and your energy. And I've had to learn a lot of random things that I didn't know before, which, you know, pro and a con.
But it's fun. Like, you taught our girls about amphibians, and they fell in love with axolotls. And
axolotl.
It's exciting. It's fun. We take them to the planetarium, and we are out on hikes. So yeah, you can teach them anywhere. There are other options. There's monastery schools, charter schools. There's unschooling, which we didn't get into. That's a huge heated debate right now. Just, yeah.
It's like a...
Go ahead. You.
It's like a step above Montessori, where it's allowing the child to basically learn what they're interested in, and there's not really much structure from you.
There's no structure, really.
Yeah.
It's like they show interest, and then you teach. So you wouldn't teach them how to write until they're asking you, how do I make these letters? Then you'd go into it. Which, I mean, I would argue that's a great, in theory and concept, that might be a great way to do it, because in my schooling experience, if I had nothing to give, if I had no cares in the world, then I had no cares in the world, no matter how much it was preached or lectured at me or how much homework I had to do on the topic. Didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. Skated by with the bare minimum.
But again, it's enforcing that idea of creative thinking, problem solving, what you're interested in, and that's what's leading your development, rather than basically giving your children the structure and then they find their way through that structure.
They create their own structure.
There you go.
Yeah. They come up to you and say, hey, I want to make pizza. Cool. We're going to teach them about food. You know, we'll do a food science class while they're learning how to make pizza from scratch. Or I want to learn how to make a whistle, or I don't know, whatever it may be, whatever they show interest in. That's what the lesson is geared around, and that's how you teach, is my understanding of unschooling.
Yeah.
But it is a very heated thing on social media these days.
It is. Because parenting is so tricky, because how do you know what's going to be best for your child? And other people, this works great for their children. Why doesn't it work for your children? It's so...
So really, you've just got to follow your gut. You got to follow your gut. And in our challenge, I want to leave us with a challenge.
Yeah.
We're never done learning.
Nope.
That's the whole essence of this podcast, is to foster that sense of curiosity, to ask questions, and to continually learn new things, deeper things. And so take something that you that you are a diehard on. This is
Yeah.
a deep challenge, and it might be very difficult for you, but take something that you are just diehard on and openly consider the opposing viewpoint.
Ooh.
Go do that. That will show you the biggest education, especially at this year in our political climate. We're in a presidential election. It never gets any better. I would say every election it just gets more and more vicious, just more and more vitriol. Go look at an opposing viewpoint on something that you're very passionate on. So if you are pro-choice, go look at the pro-life movement and actually consider it. Don't go look at it thinking, nah, I already know everything, and I'm just going to find that they're a bunch of schmucks. No. Go look at it with an open mind and try and prove your own previously held beliefs wrong. If you are hardcore religious, go look at an atheistic article.
Ooh.
You know? Seriously, go find something that you hold so I am this and consider the opposite viewpoint. I'm not saying you have to switch teams. Just go research it, dig into it, consider it, walk in those shoes. That will do so much for you.
If you're straight, go kiss a girl.
Or even just read a story about a queer experience.
Go kiss a girl.
So yeah, take something that you are hardcore in support of or against and openly, honestly consider
That's
the
your
opposing
challenge.
viewpoint.
I'm sorry.
To kiss a girl? Oh, what's yours? Are you giving a challenge too?
No. I was saying that it's your challenge because I did the challenge this week. So now it's your turn.
Oh, I will. I honestly love doing this. So, so again, this is part of something that we've learned in the domino effect because our pendulum swung from hyper religious to atheistic, agnostic, and now we're like in the middle again. We're finding balance. So I this is a practice that I love to do because I've been both sometimes. When I was hyper conservative, I was very pro-life. And then I started stepping away from the conservative movement and I became very pro-choice. And now I would classify myself as neither of those. Yeah. So yes, give it a try. Anyways, we want to thank you for joining us for our dive into the education program and my many soapboxes on.
And we have many opinions. If you have any opinions or thoughts or opposing thoughts, let's chat. Let's learn together.
Yeah.
Let's figure some stuff out together. But I love the cute. As always, friends, let's stay curious. Let's ask the questions that make us think bigger than ourselves.
Love you so much. Bye.
Bye.